like I said, those of you who are regular viewers of the show know that I am a history nut. It's what I got my degree in. It's what I do. So, the first thing we're going to do today is we're going to do stuff that happened in May throughout history. The month of May throughout history. So, in May, in the year 1431, 1431, Joan of Arc, condemned as a heretic. The Catholic Church condemned her as a heretic, which means like somebody in league with the devil. Joan of Arc, she led France to victory over the English, kicked the English out of France, and then the French said, thank you, by killing her. They burned her at the stake. That means they tied her up to a big log, and they set her on fire. Wow. The French are so nice. So that happened in 1431. In 1927, 1927, it's Friday. Charles Lindbergh, famous American aviator, landed his plane in Paris, completing the very first solo airplane flight across the Atlantic Ocean. It took him he flew for 36 hours straight. Little tiny dinky plane flying over the Atlantic Ocean. He flew from New York to Paris. First person to do that by himself. You know, a couple times I've flown from New York to London, and it takes 5 hours, 6 hours maybe, 5.5, 6 hours. This guy flew in a little dink plane, a little tiny, just nothing plane, for a day and a half on the same trip. All right, 1945. In May 1945, 1945, Germany surrendered to the good guys, ending World War II. Germany surrendered. They said, we give up. Please stop killing us. That ended World War II. In 1953, 1953, Sir Edmund Hillary of New Zealand conquered Mount Everest on this month in 1953, 55 years ago. He conquered Mount Everest, the tallest mountain on Earth. Five years later, in 1958, 1958, unidentified soldiers, that means soldiers whom their identity is not known. We didn't know who they were. American soldiers, unidentified, from World War II and the Korean War, were buried in Arlington National Cemetery. Arlington National Cemetery is this really huge, giant cemetery just outside of Washington, D.C., and it's where they bury soldiers who die fighting. And back then, that's when they first started to bury unknown soldiers in Arlington National Cemetery. So these were the first guys to be buried there. They were soldiers from World War II and from Korea. So, and let's see, 1980, 1980, 28 years ago. God, I'm getting old. Mount St. Helens volcano, Mount St. Helens volcano in Washington State, which is on the west coast of America, exploded, leaving 57 57 people dead or missing. Just gone. I was only a kid in 1980 when that thing blew up. But when it blew, it was on the west coast of America. I grew up on the east coast of America, 5,000 kilometers away. And when this thing blew up for there was so much stuff that went up into the air afterwards for 2 months. In my hometown in Washington, D.C., there was so much junk in the air, in the atmosphere. It gave us really, really cool sunsets and sunrises for 2 months. All the particles in the air and the sunlight reflecting off it. Terrible natural disaster, but cool sunsets. All right, and 2002, just 6 years ago, a solemn, that means very serious. Solemn means serious. And wordless, that means nobody spoke. So a serious and quiet ceremony marked the end of the cleanup of Ground Zero in New York. 8.5 months after the September 11th attacks. So, 8.5 months after the attacks, they finished cleaning up and getting all the debris and the bodies out of there. And they had a very serious and quiet ceremony saying, we're done. My only point with that's all well and good, but here it is, 6 years later, and it's still a giant hole in the ground. When are these guys going to build something? Don't you just hate politics? Build something already.